All right, let's take a little time travel back to the year 2020, just at the beginning when COVID first came around and everybody was wondering, I wonder if this is going to stay here for a long time. Do I have to cancel all my in person workshops, my in person trainings and events? Or is this gonna disappear and I can just continue the same way as I did before? And I know I was very hesitant in the beginning. I thought this is going to pass quickly. I'm going to put some extra hand sanitizers. I'm going to do some surveys of people, making sure that they don't have any symptoms. Maybe I'll even require tests. But the more the time went on, the more I knew, okay, this is not going to be over very quickly, and I need to figure out, am I going to move things online? And I know there were a lot of people who were maybe holding on to the fact that maybe we'll go back to in person quicker than we thought. And once you realize that you don't have any money coming in because you can't run your programs, you can't do your work, you might get really desperate. And at one point, you had to pull the trigger, or at least I know a lot of people who did, where they had to figure out how to move their in person to virtual. And I'm very excited that today there's two of the alumni of my virtual facilitator training joining me. They've taken the program, I think it was September 2020, and have then turned their in-person training to virtual. And both Jean and Rebecca, who are waiting backstage, sitting in front of their own computers, they received the most amazing testimonials and feedback from their virtual participants. And this is the email that Jean actually forwarded to me a couple of weeks ago that inspired me to invite them and, first of all, have a conversation about what are the secrets to making a virtual training so engaging that you get these types of testimonials. And second of all, what's next? The world is opening up in many places, and some people are going back to in-person, others staying virtual, and maybe even others are doing something hybrid. So this is one of the emails that Jean and Rebecca received after their training. Your training gave me a boost of hope for the often disappointing world of virtual learning. And this is in 2022, where I think most virtual trainings and workshops should already have improved a lot since 2020. But it still is often disappointing. I sometimes doubt the practical learning experiences offered by virtual classes, but your class proved this virtual learning thing can be done and done well. I found this class both entertaining and educationally rewarding. Your team and those who volunteered to present provided excellent content delivery. Clearly your team are invested and excited in what they share, and I will certainly recommend this class to others. So I am very excited to welcome Jean Eells and Rebecca Christoffel, because that's an amazing testimonial, right? So maybe we'll start with just getting a little bit of context. What is the training that you're getting such rave reviews for?
Sure, the training is for agency personnel in the United States who have to take this training because it's a required part of their certification or recertification. And so they kind of have to be a captive audience. They don't necessarily get to choose not to come. But once they're in, they seem to be really happy about it. It has to do with soil and water conservation, and these are conservation professionals in the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and our programming has to do with helping them serve women farmers and landowners better.
Right. So it's a very, very specific, small, audience that you're serving there, and I think you already told me this before. There aren't a lot of other trainings or programs about this topic, right? So this is kind of the only one. And Rebecca, I'm curious. So both of you co-facilitate. Can you tell us a bit more about how you divide the different roles?
Sure. So Jean is really the lead. I mean, this is her baby, and I was invited to co-teach with her and really enjoy it. So she has the expert knowledge, and gives a presentation at the beginning of the training about women and women's styles of communication, etc. And from there on in, we kind of divide things up. I like to think of myself as the quote unquote tech expert. So I'm the person who puts together the breakout rooms. I deal with any little problems that might come up in terms of during the class, trying to troubleshoot with participants who are having trouble hearing, or if they're having trouble having their video on, have broadband issues and that. And then we have changed the course considerably in the 2 years. So I now do more of actual content in terms of some of the principles of interpretation that are part of teaching more effectively, not just with women, but with all people.
Nice. Yes, I think we'll definitely touch base on how your program has evolved from the first time you ran it virtually to the last one, which was just, I guess, a month ago. Could you actually take us back to 2020 when was the moment where you decided, okay, I think we have to do this virtually?
I pouted all summer of 2020 because I was sure that not only the audience for other work that I did, I was sure that they weren't going to come back because they were elderly and fearful. And this particular audience that Rebecca and I work with were ruled by agency rules, and we didn't know if they would ever let them come back to in person. When I saw an opportunity on Facebook that you had offered, we had a conversation, an initial conversation, you and I. And from there, I gained some hope, I guess. And I talked to Rebecca about the possibility of taking the virtual facilitator training. So at least we could reclaim this course, which is it's important for the agency, it's important for us. And it's certainly important for the women that they serve and the planet. So it was a really big deal to figure out how to do this.
Yeah, I think
difference.
Yeah, because it's the only one, you're the only ones teaching this. If you didn't figure it out, that content would not be delivered at all.
Right.
Yeah. So how, I want to talk about this transition first of all into virtual, and what were some of the most difficult things or the parts that you were worried about the most that wouldn't be possible when you went virtual? I don't know if you remember any of those.
I'll let Rebecca jump in on that one.
Go ahead, Jean.
Oh, okay. I was fearful at this age of learning a whole bunch of new skills. I thought I can just kind of coast because I had honed my in-person skills. So I was worried about everything from the ability to actually connect with people to there's a component of the course that I think we're probably both still not real happy with yet, but it's that sense of community that we need to create to mimic what must happen in the women's meetings when they have women's meetings about conservation. That was a real key part. And once we learned how to facilitate virtually, it really, I think, put it over the top for me to be able to say, oh, we can handle a gallery full of people and learn techniques to have each one of them talk, have their cameras on, have all of those kind of things so that we would keep the interaction centered rather than have it become a webinar, which for us was just kind of like the term of death for a learning event. They have their place, and I attend some myself, but we didn't want ours to become a webinar.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that there's a lot of people out there who are still doing this type of learning experience, which to me is a like one directional, more lecture based, death by PowerPoint presentation where you're basically just trying to deliver the information that you have to the other end by saying the information and maybe showing some images. Um, Sometimes people are lucky if they see images rather than just slides with text. Like why was that? Okay, that's maybe the extreme part, but why was that not attractive to you?
I'll just jump in and say, and then I'll have Rebecca fill in. Not doing PowerPoints was essential to the women's meetings that we have. So because all of our women's meetings are discussion based, a key part of the course is to mimic that discussion style meeting that women thrive in. They just thrive in that kind of environment. And that's so different than most of what the conservation programs have been. They're usually more of a lecture-based webinar style. And so for people to experience that is what I think is the key part. And I was so afraid we could not replicate that virtually. And there's some parts that we still don't have quite right. So, Rebecca?
Yeah, so modeling the behavior that we want the participants to engage in is really important. And truthfully, death by PowerPoint, it croaks me. I can't stay on when it's just going to be lecture the whole way. It's just it's mind numbing. So having the format as we do, where we use breakout groups quite a bit, and we have a lot of discussion, both in larger groups and in small groups, is really important. But it was a matter of figuring that out and figuring out some of the nuances in terms of specific exercises that we wanted to do and how could we pull that off in an online platform. And then practicing with it and figuring it out. And, Zoom continues to evolve as well and give us features that we can then use to make our lives easier to pull this off.
Yeah. So how has your training? How many times have you led the training virtually since 2020?
I'd bet close to 25 times. 20, yeah, some pretty close to that, which is an amazing number because if we were doing it in person, we don't travel during the winter months because of where we live. It's very difficult for us to get a whole team of people elsewhere. And now we can have more trainings, which the states are very eager to have. So it's increased our volume of business, even if the training is a little less cost for the states.
Right. So how has, and like I'm also hearing like all of the new features. So you've run more trainings and probably served a bigger audience because people don't have to travel like physically to attend. Um, how has your training evolved from the first time that you ran it to like the latest one? Not just thinking of the Zoom features, but are there any lessons you can share that others might be able to apply to their trainings?
I love being able to bring in guest speakers, and the participants love that too. So because we're not constrained by geography, I have stories told live on Zoom by women farmers, which move the participants greatly. So taking the geography off the table and being able to bring awesome speakers has been really wonderful. I also love being able to have more team members involved. So I have, in addition to Rebecca, who I've always loved working with, I have 4 other team members that I can bring in and work with. So I get to work with fun people.
Right. So was that something you only introduced like with the guest speakers like recently, or that's been part of the program from the beginning?
It was part of the program from the beginning, but I could only do one because I was constrained by geography.
Mm-hmm.
So where we would if we would travel to another state, then the woman farmer that they could talk to had to be geographically close to where the training was held. And maybe she had a great story. We always worked with whoever we had. But now I've got some women who have phenomenal stories, and every class gets to hear them because of that. So it makes a big difference. I've also appreciated the fact that Zoom allows me to record. So I was able to record their stories. So if they have some tech problems, I've got a backup plan. And that helps. You know, I mean, that's something that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So that's a big advantage to going virtual.
Yeah. From the first virtual to the last virtual, what were the improvements that you've, or like, was there a process like the, I've shared this before, I think with you as well. I like to do almost like a self-assessment. There's also two of you, and I know that you do a pretty extensive surveying of your participants as well. Would you say that that is how you made it improve every time you ran it? And maybe you can tell a bit about those results as well.
So I would say yes. We debrief after every course and talk about what went well, what didn't go so well. Might we change this, that, or the other thing? And we evaluate. The participants actually fill out an evaluation. So we have a SurveyMonkey link, and they go to that and fill out an evaluation. And one thing that really has pleased me, and I'm sure has also really pleased Jean, is that we get about an 80% or better response rate, even with the virtual courses. Now, the in-person courses, we could withhold their little paper, their certificate, that they had successfully completed the course. You give me the evaluation, I give you the paper. We can't do that in a virtual platform. So it's really voluntary. We just, explain how important the evaluation is and that we use their input to improve the course. So we've had great responses from participants, and between what they tell us and our putting our heads together and assessing each course, that is what has really led to a lot of changes in the course, besides the agency itself imposing some time restrictions in that, which also changed the course. So we've got a lot of different influencers in terms of the course and its development. But I think it's really helped.
Yeah, and I think even like if I think back to what I taught and what I used in my own trainings in 2020, some of those things don't work anymore. After most people have been on Zoom for 2 years, I feel like there's different challenges that we have to approach. Like yesterday, I did my first audio only Zoom experience where I basically removed the ability for anyone to turn on their camera. And I told people it's going to be cameras off. And we all moved away from our desks because I invited everyone to tune in from their phone rather than from the desktop computer. And I feel like that's one way I'm looking at innovating. How can we still stay connected with each other and engage, but maybe do it a little bit differently, because the novelty of being in a Zoom meeting definitely has worn off. So I'm really curious. The email that I shared earlier, the testimony, was a couple of weeks ago. It is 2022. So there's obviously something that you're doing that still shows to your participants that it's really valuable and it's different to what they've experienced before. What would you say are the secrets to getting such great, I like to call them love letters, from your participants?
I would say right off the bat, one of the things is that our participants are not by and large used to Zoom. Their agency uses another platform, which is dull, it's a lot more clunky, and they're in the habit of sitting with cameras off. So the fact that we can do things with Zoom, and I throw them into breakout rooms and expect them to talk with each other, suddenly cameras come on. And of course, those are all things that we've talked about in the virtual training, which I think is really a key to staying fresh, staying connected to a virtual training community so that I learn about what's new in Zoom, what's coming up, what are techniques that people are trying. Because I know that if I'm having people experience Zoom fatigue, the rest of you all as facilitators are too. And how do you, what are you doing? So one of the things that changed pretty dramatically that we've noticed this year, and we started implementing it more at the beginning of this year, is really spending some time at the beginning asking people to self-reflect on how can they make this the best training that they can do. What are the things under their control? And I think that's really helped. It's helped them be a little more reflective. And so if they're having a bad training experience, we're doing all we can to make it as good as possible, and they have to put a little effort in too to be able to make that good. And the agency has really appreciated that. So they're all over it because they spend a lot of money to have their people trained, and they want their people to get the value out of the training. So it's worked really well.
Nice. Rebecca, do you have something to add in terms of secrets?
Well, I guess I think of one of the secrets is engagement from the get-go. So when people come on, we right away use like how do you feel as a cat or sheep? Or we have a map where they can annotate and put on stamps problems that they see on the landscape. So we right away have them doing something. And as they come online, we greet each one of them by name and welcome them. And we make people, make it known that they're welcome if their cat comes and sits on their lap. Or if somebody has a baby and, they need to attend to the baby, that's perfectly fine. Just mute yourself if the baby is mewling or whatever, but it's that, we understand the constraints that people are working under, and, we don't want anybody to get less out of the experience because they're feeling embarrassed or, they're uncomfortable because they are working from home and they have children in that they also have to be tending to. I think that helps. But really, it's the engagement, the fact that they are engaged and doing things almost the entire time. There's very little just sitting and listening to me going on and on, or to Jean going on and
on. Nice. Well, I think based on what I've heard you share, what I've heard your participants share in their evaluations, your training is like the best it can be. At this time, as things will change, as new features come out, there's always room to improve and make it different. And maybe in a couple months, people will get tired of what we're doing now. We have to innovate again. But I'm curious. I think, Jean, you said you've been asked to potentially run this training again in person. And there's a lot of people out there who are currently asking themselves the same questions, like, do I stay with virtual only and this will be the only way this program will be delivered? Am I going to offer it in person and virtual? Like maybe you alternate, one in person, one virtual? Or is there a way of having people come to the same program in person and tune in from like further away on Zoom? So I'm curious where you're at in that transition. What are the things you've already talked about or thought about?
So one of the things that I think is likely to continue, and I spring this on Rebecca, and yet we've kind of talked about it, is the fact that we can continue to offer virtual trainings through the winter. And so theoretically, we could have as many trainings as she and I are willing to schedule, which could really jam up our schedule. But on the other hand, because we don't have to travel and the agency people don't have to travel, I think there'll be a fair amount of appeal for that if they can get their act together with budgets and things like that quickly enough to pivot. I have some real concerns about the in-person because travel is so much more difficult now. Airlines, and I use motor coaches in part of the training where we go someplace, and the motor coach companies, tour companies, are coming back, but they were decimated by 2020. And so to find somebody reliable, et cetera. So there's a whole lot more moving parts to the in-person that I'm not sure I'm willing to do. And yet I have team members, and Rebecca's one, and I put myself in this camp. There's a joy to the in-person, and there are some elements that I'm not sure that are getting through quite as well as they do in person. So I'm thinking, yeah, we kind of need to have some in person. So I'm putting a travel boundary line around the state where I live to go to the surrounding states, where I can drive within a day during the summer months when the travel's okay. So I'm thinking about that. So I've got logistical things that I'm wrestling with. And I know Rebecca's wrestling with other things related to the training.
I'm curious, what is Rebecca wrestling with?
Well, I like the in person, and part of it is not just that I like being around other people and seeing them. Part of it is we have a field tour that we typically do when we are in person that we cannot do virtually. We have farmers come in and tell their stories in the virtual landscape, but when we go in person, we actually take the bus out to somebody's farm. We actually do some exercises on the farm itself, demonstrating, people who have disabilities and how we might accommodate people who either, have had knee replacements or hip replacements, people who maybe have aging eyes and can't see so well. They get to actually experience, we have props that we use so they can experience these ailments and come to a better understanding of their audiences. We practice some of the techniques that we would use in interpretation with outdoor school groups with our participants, so that if they're on a field tour or leading a field tour, they can use these tips and tricks in terms of managing their audiences. And we talk a bit about that virtually, but I always think of my training is as a wildlife biologist, and I learned really well in school about how to lay out transects, etc., and all sounded so perfectly obvious in the classroom. Then you go out to the field and you're laying out a transect, and you come upon, oh my God, I've got this big swale here. It's all wet. How am I going to get this transect laid out? So the reality doesn't always match the theoretical or example that's given in the classroom. So that's one part of the training that I think just doesn't perform as well in the virtual landscape as it does in person. The other part is really the introductions when we go around in a circle. We do this virtually, giving everybody time, but it's not the same as sitting in a circle and experiencing that as a group. And, we're doing it as best we can virtually, but I don't think that it's quite the same as when you do it in person.
Yeah.
I think there's some things that require a bodily spatial awareness that I don't think we can mimic very well.
So would you say, like, Rebecca, what you said makes so much sense, that there's certain things, certain topics that, like, you almost can't really fully explain virtually, right? Like, you need to get I feel like you need to get your hands dirty to really understand certain things.
Right. You
Right.
can explain it all virtually, but you can't really understand until you experience it. And that has to be real.
Mm-hmm. Um, it makes me think also the part that I'm experimenting with right now is how can we still do things virtually but get away from our desks? Like, would there be a way where people are on their phone and they're actually in the natural environment, like on their land, doing something and still being able to have that a little bit of both, right? The connection and the community that you have virtually, not having to travel somewhere, but still being able to, yeah, not just be in their home office on their couch, wherever they're tuning in. Um, but yeah, so many questions to figure out, like virtual, in person. Have you ever considered doing something like hybrid, like having a small group in person and some people tuning in virtually?
Because when we travel for those things, we're so dependent on other people's technology. Um, and all of a sudden, they've got 25 people on a Zoom, and their bandwidth all of a sudden is unstable, and they don't necessarily know how to anticipate those things. So we struggle a lot with anticipating how to work with technology in a hybrid setting in a different location. Um, I do like the idea of adding phones and having people. We really work hard at having people get up from their desk and move their upper body and stuff to get the blood flowing because that's a real challenge. But yeah, I think there's some challenges with hybrid that I'm not sure that we're going to be able to solve with our training.
Mm-hmm. So where are you at? Like, is this something that you're like, are you close to maybe doing an in-person again anytime soon, or are you still with virtual for the rest of the year?
Virtual for the rest of the year. That's just kind of the nature of the contract.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be 2023. And I have to be frank, I am kind of laying on the floor, kicking and screaming, and I don't want to have to rebudget everything, because I'll keep the virtual budget, but now I've got to start all over again with all of the travel costs and all, my team costs and all that kind of stuff. So I got to rebudget the whole darn thing for in person. And frankly, it'll probably be a third or more expensive even than it was before because of the extra costs. And I don't think they're going to go for it because it is more expensive. It's more expensive for them to get their people there and then to go to have gone to all that work of budgeting and then have them say, "Oh no, we'll just do the virtual."
Right.
But
Yeah, I think
I'm
that's
still
one
kind of
thing.
kicking and screaming. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing that a lot of people are realizing now that are going back to in person. I talked to a few other people who do team building workshops or leadership training. All of their budgets for in person have gone up because suddenly we realize, hey, I actually am losing so much time traveling myself. Then,
Yep.
for if you work with organizations that actually pay you your travel, you have to add that on top. They have to rent space. Like, there's a lot of additional costs, at least for the people who've already figured out how to do it virtually well, which I would say you definitely have.
And it's saved our clients so much money. I just don't see them going back. Even though the clients themselves, the participants, all we get that constantly on the evaluations. Oh, this would be great in person. The only thing that would be better is if it was in person. And yeah, I don't know if the agency feels that way.
Right. Well, you keep me updated on how things develop, and I know we'll have a lot more chats in the coming months. Um, Before I'm gonna see if there's anybody who's watching who has maybe a question, feel free to write those in the comments and we'll pull them up. Um, I would love to talk about the virtual facilitator training that you've both done with me. Now it's gonna be 2 years ago. Uh, really long time. I've also run several cohorts and improved every time. I haven't done, how many did you do? 25? Uh, 20
Yeah,
something
somewhere
you said.
around that.
Yeah.
yeah, right around.
I've only run it 7 times, but the eighth one is coming up in September, and I would love to create a little discount code for anybody that is watching this. And I thought, why not? How about Jean and Rebecca? You both give me a word, and we'll combine them into a word that doesn't exist, and that will be the code that I'll plug in later after this video is done. So, Jean, what's one? Let me actually ask you a question. What is one word that often shows up in the evaluations from your participants?
Fun.
All right, fun. And Rebecca, what's your favorite thing about virtual facilitation?
Home.
Home?
Hmm.
Okay, let's just call it home fun. So let me put that up on screen. Let's see if this works. All right, I need to move it a little bit, and I need to just take off our names, and then I will put that up on the screen. So if you use this code that we just co-created, home fun, it will take a couple minutes after we end being live, and then you can plug that in on that link down here. I'll post it in the comments too. Do you have any messages for somebody who might be considering signing up for the virtual facilitator training?
Yes, just do it.
Do it. Absolutely. Do it. Don't hold back. You will be so glad you invested in yourself. Yeah, do it.
Yeah,
Just
you
jump.
will definitely not regret it. You want to do this.
Amazing. So this is the code that you can use, and when you both took the training, it actually was a 5-week cohort. I am currently also experimenting with a new format where we're doing actually a 3-day cohort. So it's 3 days back to back, but it's 3 1 hour 45 minute. It's 5 1 hour 45-minute sessions. So they're shorter sessions. Then you have a longer break. You have another shorter session. The second day we actually only do one session, so you can have a little break in the middle and take care of all the other things. And then on the last day, we again do 2 sessions kind of back to back. Because I also realized, okay, sometimes it's a bigger commitment to sign up for something for 5 weeks. And I already have the first 3 people have already signed up. So I'm very excited about this next cohort.
Yeah, I like the new format that you're experimenting with. That always works best for me. Just do it all and get her done.
Yeah, time is valuable, as I'm realizing people don't want to travel because not so much because of the cost, because of the time and hassle of traveling right now. So if you can get the same information in shorter time, that should be even more valuable.
That's great.
All right, I'm going to see if there are any questions. I don't see anything yet. So if somebody's still watching and you have a question, even if you watch this in the replay, I'll check and we'll respond. I do have one. There's one comment. Let me pull that up. Hold on. Add to broadcast. Here we go. I think it's Ballard. If I pronounce your name correctly, let me know. He's leaning more towards virtual because we need to change our mindset about virtual versus in person, right? I would say that for me, it really depends on a couple of things. Like I think of where are the people that actually want or need to participate in this training, and like for both of your program, they were local, but now that you're doing it virtually, you kind of expanded your reach a bit. And then the other thing that I think Rebecca you mentioned is the actual content. Like some things, and that's how I approach even hybrid. I am not a huge fan of hybrid, like people at the same time virtual and in person, because certain themes, certain topics are better virtual to make sure everybody has the same experience. They're not feeling excluded because they're the only one virtual and everybody else is in person. And some things are much better in person. Like you have to, like, I'm always thinking like sharing a meal with someone has been suggested several times, and I've done a few of like virtual dinners before, but I really I don't enjoy watching and hearing somebody eating in front of their screen and them watching me. Because
Yeah.
if you're on the screen, you can't really look away. If you're in a restaurant, like nobody's actually looking at you the whole time.
Right.
So anything with food, I feel like that almost has to be in person. All right.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that might have been our last question. So thank you, both of you, for taking the time for this, and we will definitely be in touch.
Thanks.
Good. Thanks. Bye.
All right,
Bye.
bye.